Hey, we're talking about the area of a triangle today, which comes from 10.2 out of our book. And before we get started on area of a triangle, we need to quickly review area of a rectangle and area of a parallelogram that we did last week. Remember, for both of those, it was base times height. And you'll see that this triangle is going to tie right into that parallelogram formula that we did earlier. But before we do this, we need to make sure we have this vocabulary down. So let's go ahead and get started. The base of a triangle is the length of any of its sides. So again, you could choose any side and make it the base. You just have to create the height accordingly, and you'll see what I mean in a second. The height of the triangle then is the perpendicular distance between the side that you've designated as the base and the vertex opposite that side. So this is a lot like the parallelogram, where the height is going to be a perpendicular line. We want that straight up and down. We don't want any slants going on here. So when we look here, they've chosen this to be the base, the bottom side, and then they've created this imaginary line here and said that's the height because it creates this perpendicular line. Notice it is not a side. Occasionally, if it's a right triangle, it can be the side, but for all other triangles, it's going to be this imaginary line that's drawn between the base and the vertex that is opposite the base. Remember, the vertex is where these two sides meet, and that's the one that's opposite the base. So a perpendicular line between the vertex opposite the base. And then we have our formula, 1/2 times base times height. That's what's going to help us figure out the area of any triangle. When you can figure out the base and the height, multiply it and take it divided by 2, or multiplied by 1/2, same thing. So let's go ahead and look at this. We've got a figure. We've got two different shapes. Don't be afraid to cut a bigger complex shape down into two smaller, more familiar shapes. And so with this, we can make a rectangle here and a triangle up here. So if we go ahead and look, the base for here, the area of the triangle is 45 square feet. We're going to go ahead and look, we've got 10 meters here for our base, 3 for our height, so 10 times 3 is, this doesn't really, oh, we're on this one, haha, sorry about that. I thought we were on this one. I thought this doesn't make any sense. We're going to take 10 times 3, so 10 times 3, that's our base times our height, and then we get 30. Now we need to take it times 1/2, which for some of you, you can remember that taking it times 1/2 or dividing it by 2 is the same thing. So 15 meters squared is what this triangle is. And then our rectangle here would be base times height, 10 times 4. So this one would be 40. This would be 15 for this total triangle up here. Therefore, altogether, it should equal 55 meters squared. How about here? We've got a base of 6 inches and a height of 4 inches. So again, we take 1/2 times base times height. So I'm going to take 1/2 times 6 times 4. When I do that, I have 1/2 times 24. 1/2 of 24 is 12. So 12 inches squared is what we have for this one. Now this number 4, going backwards, here we have the area is 45. So 45 is what we're starting out with. Remember before, this is our formula in order to find the area. Now we have the area, and they're giving us some dimensions. We know that the base, it's going to be 1/2 times the base times the height. The base is 10 feet. What would the height be? This is what we're going to solve for here. Well, let's think about it. 1/2 times 10 is 5. So we've got 45 is equal to 5 times the height. Well, what times 5 equals 45? When we divide 45 by 5, we find out that 9 is what that height has to be. 9 is the height. So this is an instance where we're working backwards. We've done that before. That's how you need to go ahead and do it. I want you to do this number 1 on your own. We're going to keep moving on. Find the area of the figure. Let's just identify what is the base, what is the height. What's our base right here for this one? That's our bottom. This is going to be our base here. What's our height? This is a nice right triangle, so our height actually is the side here because it makes a perpendicular line. How about here? Where's our base? Our base is this 10. Where's our height? Again, it's a right triangle, so this is our height over here, the 8.5. What about this one here? Here's our base. Our height is 4. Here's our vertex opposite our base. These ones get a little tricky here. What's our base? It's just this part right here. This is dotted because it's not an actual line. 1 1/4 happens to be our base. Our height, because this doesn't drop inside, it's okay to drop it outside. This is still the height here. So this is going to be our height, the 6 feet. Even here, this one's upside down. The base would be here. The height would be here. Or it's a right triangle. You could say this is the base, this is the height. Here's our base. Here's our height. So let's go ahead and we'll do these first top 3 together, and you're going to do these bottom 3 on your own. So here we need to remember that area is equal to 1/2 times base times height. Or for some of you in the past, you might have had teachers that told you the area is equal to base times height and divide it by 2. That's fine. These are actually the same formula. They're just written in 2 different ways. So whichever one you're most familiar with, that's fine. Either one will work. So we're going to stick with this one for the most part because that's what our book is telling us to do. But this one is not wrong. So let's take our 1/2 times our base times our height. We've got 1/2 times 8 times 2. So when we do that, we've got, remember with multiplication, we can do any of these, but order of operations tells us to start at the left and move forward. What's 1/2 times 8? 4 times 2 is 8 miles squared. Over here, we've got 1/2 times base times height. Our base is 10. 1/2 times 10 times 8.5. All right, 1/2 times 10 would give me 5. So if I want to just break this down, now I have 5 times 8.5. And when I do that, remember you can use a calculator if you happen to have, as long as you write it down, what you're putting in there. So 5 times 8.5, you would have gotten, I'm going to get rid of this. You would have gotten 42.5, and then we have to remember to put centimeters squared because it's area. Now again here, let's do 1/2 times the base, which is 10, times the height, which is 4. 1/2 times 10 is 5, so we have 5 times 4, which equals 20 feet squared. All right, so the area is 20 feet squared for this one. I want you to do these 3 on your own, and we'll check them in class tomorrow. So 1/2 times base times height will give you the area of any triangle. Remember that the base is any of the sides. The height creates a perpendicular line between the base and the vertex opposite it. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.